Hi, this is Chuck Westfall from Canon USA, and I'm here at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas demonstrating the new EOS-1D X professional digital SLR from Canon. This is our newest flagship model. We introduced it actually last October, and it is a new full-frame camera, 18.1 megapixel, with 12 frame per second capability on stills, and also a 61-point autofocus system. Now, one of the features about this camera that is also important is the fact that we've gone to a new 100,000 pixel RGB metering sensor. That metering sensor is actually powered by its own Digit 4, so you can think of it as a small camera within a camera. And the benefit of that is that it allows us to do a much better job in terms of tracking the color of the subject and also the facial detail, so that we can use that information to fine-tune the exposure, the white balance, and even use it optionally to help track the subject in a moving sequence. So this camera is really designed to be our best yet in terms of overall image quality. With that 18.1 megapixel, we're also doing dual Digit 5 Plus image processors. That helps us get up to an ISO of 204,800 on the top end, which is the highest it's ever been. Also, noise levels are better than they've ever been in comparable ISOs to any previous EOS camera. Now that feature of the high image quality and low noise also extends into our video functionality on this camera, and that's the other thing I wanted to mention, is that we made some major improvements compared to previous EOS models in terms of video quality, reducing moire, reducing obviously the noise levels, but in addition to those features, we're also offering two new compression methods that have either all intra-frame, which is allowing it to do actual frame extraction and has the highest image quality and lowest demand on the actual processor or the camera or the computer. Or we have the new IPB codec, which is a better format in terms of storage efficiency, but requires a little bit more horsepower on the computer for post-processing. So either way, this camera is going to give the cinematographer a little bit more flexibility, especially in terms of the image quality, higher ISOs, and the ease of the post-processing. So also one other last feature we better mention about this is that it has a new Ethernet port on the side with 1000 base T gigabit Ethernet speed that allows image to be transferred out of the camera at a very high rate of speed, much faster than the USB port. Now this is suitable not only for direct connection into a computer, but it also can be set up on a total wired LAN. So for many situations where there's multiple cameras, or a media situation where there's a lot of different access going into a main computer system, this Ethernet really does a tremendous job on increasing the versatility and throughput of this camera. We're very excited to be able to have it here on display. We're looking forward to shipping it to the market in the early part of April at a suggested list price of approximately $6,800 for the camera body.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chuck. And in terms of availability, you're saying early April now. Is there going to be CPS members getting the first batches, or people shooting the Olympics or anything like that, or is it going to be a free-for-all? I remember back from the 1D4, CPS members and Olympic people were given priority.
Well, the area about distribution of the camera is a little bit outside my league, so I don't want to really get into too much detail about it. But I will say that when we have major corporate customers that are buying in bulk, chances are that they're going to get some of the early shipments, just due to the fact that they're ordering such a high quantity. But that's not going to preclude us from being able to ship to all our dealers throughout the country. And once we get to that point, then basically it's first come, first served.
Okay, great. And I don't think you touched much on the timecode capabilities for the video. That's an important new feature for a lot of people. You can sync multiple 1DXs by connecting them together. So for multiple camera event shooting, that's a big change. And the syncing is done over Wi-Fi using the new wireless transmitter. Is that right?
Yeah, it can be done that way if you'd like. It can also be done through the Ethernet port if you are connecting many cameras that way as well. So it's very, very cool feature that allows you to synchronize up to 10 cameras. And the other feature there is, again, you mentioned about the two different kinds of time code that can be embedded, either rec run or free run. So depending on whether it's a single camera or multi-camera configuration, you're going to pick one or the other. Also, I didn't mention another good feature about the video that got improved, and that is that you can now shoot up to 29 minutes and 59 seconds in a single clip. That's a much better feature than the 12-minute limit we used to have on the previous EOS models.
Yeah. Another feature that I discovered looking through the various documents online is the silent touch ring on the back, so you can make some adjustments while recording video without the clicks from the switches showing up. Is it possible to demonstrate that on this camera?
It might take a little bit of setup time to get it going, because we haven't prepped this camera for that feature, but I'd be happy to do it for you.
No, don't worry about it if it's going to take too much time. If you could just maybe turn the camera around quickly, though, and it's this main touch ring, right? This will essentially become a capacitive touchpad. And
exactly right. And it's an optional feature to turn on or off in the venue. Once you have it turned on, then basically you can use the menu on the LCD to select whether you're going to adjust either the audio level, the shutter, the aperture, or the ISO.
Okay.
And so while you're recording a movie, you can make adjustments to any one of those 4 different settings while you're recording.
That's great. And there's a new battery.
It's an interesting story. Actually, the case of the battery is that we took the opportunity to upgrade the battery primarily for the Japanese government electrical regulations. There's a new safety feature that supports the regulations that are required in Japan. But the battery physically is the same size as the previous one for the Mark IV and Mark III.
6 is a good start.
And they're basically totally reverse and forward compatible. So you can use old batteries in new camera, new battery in old camera. Right? It's just that as long as you're buying the new camera, you can get the new battery, and that new battery does have a little bit more storage capacity than the old one.
So old batteries from a Mark IV will work in the charger from this. What about batteries from this in an old Mark IV charger? Are they backwards compatible?
They can be. The only thing that there is a precaution on that if the battery level gets too low, that the older charger might not show the correct charge level.
Okay.
But from a safety point of view or just a functional point of view, they're basically reverse compatible and forward compatible.
Okay. And the autofocus system is hugely redesigned, really, from the previous cameras.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the number of cross-type autofocus points we're seeing at different apertures?
Yes.
I know that's been improved quite a bit from the previous cameras. So how many cross-type points do we have at, say, 2.8 and 5.6 or an f4 now?
Well, I think before we get into that much detail, let's just clarify the point that this is a complete redesign on the sensor. We used to have basically almost like a video sensor that we were using for AF, and this is more of a typical AF sensor in the respect that you have individual pixels for the actual AF points that are a little different than before. But because of that, we're able to get EV-2 sensitivity because the pixels are larger. Also, we have 61 focusing points instead of 45, and they're spread out much, much further than they were. So that's the first part. Then, coming to your point, you have up to 41 cross-type points that are sensitive to f4.
That's where it's all going.
You also have 21 cross-type points that can be... Actually, I should have said that the other way around. I apologize if I misspoke. Up to 41 points for f2.8, up to 21 points for f4. And when you get to f5.6, you still have 21 cross-type points with some lenses. That is really the end of it, though, as far as cross-type. Once you get past f5.6, then essentially this camera cannot autofocus at f8.
Yeah, so there was a few points made when the camera came out about losing the ability to focus with a lens that was natively at f8, like maybe an f4 lens with a doubler on it. And is that something that was a conscious decision in the design, or was it a necessity due to the design of the new autofocus sensor, or is it simply something you guys didn't think people wanted and kind of left by the wayside?
Well, the designers had to make a decision based on the overall balance of the performance of the camera, and nobody likes to take away a feature. So we certainly would have enjoyed keeping that feature if we could, but we looked at the overall idea of trying to enlarge the range of points that we had, increase the number of points, and especially increase the number of cross-type points within the f5.6 and lower range. And we were very successful in doing that. For any lens that is f5.6 or faster, this is a far superior AF system to any previous EOS model. So, you know, it's unfortunate that we lost the ability to autofocus on the center point at f8. But when you look at the balance of the rest of the performance of the camera, I believe that they made the right decision.
Right, so electronically it's not something that could be added in a firmware update at a future point?
I can't say that for sure, but that's something that would be up to the engineers to comment on, and at this point they have not said one way or the other. So you know, the fact that it's not in there does not preclude the idea that it could be added, but it's not something that we really have access to at this point in time.
Okay. And looking through the Viewfinder, for me the first thing that I love to see was the widening of the AF points that you mentioned, but also getting something visually like the 7D, where there was an interior overlay
yes,
behind the eyepiece there. So does that also include things, I'm trying to remember back to the first times I shot with the 7D where there was a leveling meter and other things like that? Gives a few more
we're using the focusing points for the leveling, but we also have got the on-demand grid, so you know, very similar to the 7D in that respect. The difference between the two cameras in that comparison is the fact that on the 1DX, you still have access to all the interchangeable focusing screens, whereas on the 7D, the focusing screen is fixed.
Right, okay, that's a good point. So yes, the depth of field preview button is now fully programmable, so essentially you've got 4 buttons on the front there that you can assign to video, start, stop, and things like that. And actually that's another point. There's now abilities to start recording video remotely using the wireless transmitter. And
in addition to the wireless transmitter, you can also start and stop recording video with a wired switch, and that's a big improvement compared to the previous generation.
Yeah, presumably you would be able to use some kind of radio remote like a Pocket Wizard as well, you think? Have you guys tried anything like that?
I'm not sure about that. What I can say is that you can go through the N3 remote socket as opposed to just the infrared that we had before. Okay, so you know, that means that you know, our wired remotes, for example, RS80N3 or the various different members of that accessory family will operate to start and stop movies.
Okay, and there was a GPS accessory announced at the launch time as well, and that will, you just spin the camera around and show us where that goes in the same slot as the wireless right there on the corner.
Yeah, that's correct. It's going to be one or the other on this camera.
Does it draw power from the camera, or is there a battery inside it?
It does draw power from the camera directly, and that was one way we were able to reduce the size, weight, and weight of that accessory substantially. It's a very small little piece that fits on there.
Yeah, it's the same size as the wireless transmitter.
Exactly the same.
Yeah, and with something like an iPhone, if you connect to the camera wirelessly, you can control the majority of the camera's main features from there, and then also input information to do with video recording as well, make notes on each of the clips, is that right?
All the feature set on the wireless operation through the WFT6 is basically similar to what we had before with the previous wireless units. So there are several different modes. There's the FTP mode, there's also the what we call EOS utility mode, which is where you can't control camera settings. But the third one is the WFT server mode, and that's the more interesting one, I think, for a lot of people, because basically with that mode, you're essentially setting the camera up as the server, and you can come in on a web device, any kind of a web device, up to 3 different web devices can connect into one camera, and be able to operate the camera and actually pull images from the camera directly into their computer.
And one more thing just popped into my head to do with the shooting speed. We got 12 frames a second, but also a 14 frame JPEG mode, and that locks the mirror up and disables autofocus, obviously, with the mirror up like that.
Right.
So you kind of have to set that one on a tripod or something and go with it. Is it possible just to quickly demonstrate? I know some
Sure.
people have already seen this, but the noise that it makes at 14 frames a second is phenomenal, and it's.
Well, it just so happens that I do have the camera set up to demonstrate that right away. So what I can do for you, if you want to just hear it, I'll just hold it up pretty close.
Sure.
And that's your 14 frames per second.
And what kind of buffer do you get shooting with JPEG and RAW at the 12 frame a second mode? How many shots can you get in before it?
Well, we're waiting to get the final specification from Tokyo on that. Usually, our experience has been that people in the R&D keep on working until the last minute, until they get to the point where they have a camera that is actually the same as what's going to be delivered to the customer before they arrive on things like the burst depth and the battery life.
Yeah, and it seems memory card development is so fast these days as well. Lexar just have a 1,000 speed card at the moment, so things like that are definitely going to improve the buffer capability.
This particular camera, we are compatible with the UD-MA7 up to the full speed of that specification, and that's what we recommend for people who are shooting movies especially, but anybody who's going to be doing high-speed burst shooting is going to appreciate having the ability to clear out that buffer as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and for the first time it's a dual compact flash card slot as well in the back.
Right.
If you're shooting video and you have two compact flash cards in there, will it seamlessly switch to the next card if you fill one card?
And that was a big question because when we first got the camera, of course, we didn't really have any instructions for it. We had to kind of feel our way around a little bit, and we did our own testing to find that out. And it turns out that in still pictures it'll do that, but in movies it will not. Okay. So once you hit the end of a card, you basically have to take a pause before you go to the next card.
Okay, great. Well, I think that about covers most of the main points for this. Thanks for your time, Chuck, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks you for the opportunity. Glad to be here and show you the camera.
Great, thanks.